بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبا القاسم محمد. الله صل على محمد وآل محمد. طب القلوب ودوائها ونور الأبصار وضيائها، وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فالذين آمنوا به وعزروه ونصروه واتبعوا النور الذي أنزل معه أولئك هم المفلحون. صلوات. First of your loudest salawat for the love of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The second for the love of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. And the third with your loudest voices for the love of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. Respected brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Every human being in his life needs to understand leaders that are around him. The importance of leadership can be seen from a whole variety of angles in the life of virtually every human being. Throughout history, mankind has always sought to understand people and sought to take either himself as a soldier or to take someone above him as a leader. Hence one notices in all areas of our life we will find someone who is very close to us, who we take upon ourselves as being a leader in our life. Indeed, sometimes someone who is your best friend can be seen as being your leader. And hence one notices the idea of companionship is vital in the life of every human being, with the idea that a companion is someone who can either make you laugh or always make you cry. The idea being that there are certain phrases which are given, such as do not walk around with those who make you laugh, rather walk with those who make you cry. Because someone who makes you cry is not the idea of the literal meaning of always making you cry, but the idea that a good friend who is seen as a person who has leadership skills will be the type of person who will always come forward and advise you in all matters in your life. When you are doing wrong, he will tell you, and when you are doing right, he will also inform you. Therefore, one notices that companionship is part and parcel of a human being's life in order that a human being is able to move to higher goals. There is a story about the greatness of the leadership of Amir al-Mu'mineen, for example, that one day Amir al-Mu'mineen sets off with this Jewish person, the Jewish person not knowing who he is. They set off and they meet on a way where they meet and they start continuing their journey. And as they are continuing their journey, they continue to discuss quite a few issues. Amir al-Mu'mineen had already made it clear to this Jewish person, and saying to him that I'm on my way to Kufa. And the Jewish person had said to him that I am going towards somewhere else. At this moment, what happened was, as they reached the sign which said that way towards Kufa, Amir al-Mu'mineen seemed to continue with this Jewish person towards where the Jewish person was going. The Jewish person was a bit surprised, because he looked at Amir al-Mu'mineen, and he said to Amir al-Mu'mineen, he said to him, I thought you were going to Kufa. What was the reason for you continuing with me? Kufa is going towards that way. To which Amir al-Mu'mineen at this moment, he said to him, we have been taught laws where we have been told by our Prophet Muhammad that it is vital for us to understand the idea of friendship and companionship. That if I am on a journey with someone, when I am with this person on my journey, I have to wait for him to excuse me to allow me to leave. This Jewish person, he said, no wonder your Prophet Muhammad, he built such a great state, because if he's built people like you with the morals that you will not leave a person until he's given you leave, no wonder Muhammad was so successful. As Imam Ali then got the permission from that person to leave, a friend of that person came near him. He said, do you know who was just walking with you? He said, I don't know who he was. It seemed like a stranger, but a man with great akhlaq. The person said to him, that's the Khalifa of the Muslims, Ali ibn Abi Talib, who was walking with you. He said, that was Ali ibn Abi Talib? He said, yes. He said, Ali ibn Abi Talib, the great warrior? He said, yes. Ali ibn Abi Talib, master of all the believers in Arabia? Yes. He said, therefore I understood the leadership of Amir al-Mu'mineen through the akhlaq of Amir al-Mu'mineen. That I understood that even though Amir al-Mu'mineen is the leader of the Muslims, I, a Jewish person, he took me as a companion with him. Simply because Ali ibn Abi Talib would always reiterate, if someone is not your brother in faith, he is your equal in humanity. So here, what do we notice? We notice the idea that within our lives, we always seek leaders, people who will guide us further. And that's why many of the films in the world today, or many of the films in history, have sought to look at the concept of leadership. Look at the film like Braveheart, which seems to show you a person known as Mel Gibson, or in the film he's known as what? William Wallace. This William Wallace who comes forward in the film as being a ferocious warrior, but not only a ferocious warrior, a man of principles. You don't just become a leader like anything. No, a person must have certain characteristics which endear people towards him. And this person, we see throughout the film how his leadership skills are so vital in his success that at the end, although he dies, normally a person when they die, they are seen as being a failure. Whereas when he dies, he finds that he has found freedom in his death. Because as a leader, he has maintained principles. And when a leader maintains principles, he becomes one of the most successful people in history. So here in such films, Braveheart and Gladiator and Alexander and all of these Troy and all of these new films that have come out, seeking to highlight the idea of leadership in the world today. Especially with the idea of Alexander the Great, that virtually every community recognizes Alexander the Great as being a great historical figure, a figure of great leadership and great prowess. That it is narrated, as we know, we take Alexander as being one of our people. It is narrated Alexander the Great, he once walks past the graveyard, and he comes to this town, he notices this town are people of wisdom. And he says that I gained many of my leadership skills, not from the battlefield, but from pieces of wisdom which I gained in small areas. He said, I went into this town, having gone into this town, what I found was that there were many graveyards. And with these many graveyards, what I found as well was that on each of these tombstones it was written 3 years, 4 years. 3 years, 4 years of age. And he said, I wondered, this town, it's full of people who seem to have died young. He said, I came to the leader of the town, I said to him, I've got to ask you one question. Your town seems like to be one of those where everyone seems to have died young. Is this the case? He said, no, that's not the case. He said, then what is it? Why is all the tombstones written 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 4 years, 3 years? He said, when we write ages on a tombstone, we write for how many years were they obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what we write. We don't write 60, 65, 70. Because many reach the age of 70, but he's only obeyed for 2 years, or 4 years, or 6 years. He told Alexander, we write 3 years, 7 years, 8 years, 4 years to try and show how many of these people have turned towards Allah. So here Alexander the Great becomes a great leader because of his understanding and his wide variety of movements in different communities. And even tomorrow in the sports event that you all know, the Super Bowl that is happening, you find methods, I think his name is Hasselbank and Roethlisberger, the two quarterbacks, yes? These are going to be very important leaders in the match, without a shadow of doubt. Because they will be looked up at by all the players. If either of the quarterbacks plays well, he is the one who will bring victory to that particular team. Because that quarterback is seen as being a leader. And I remember an incident which occurred in London in one of the soccer matches between Manchester United and Arsenal. And many of you have heard of these two teams. Both of them have leaders. They used to have leaders who used to be very strong. Both these leaders, known as captains, have left the two clubs now. But last year, in one of the most heated soccer matches ever to happen in London, they were both coming out in the tunnel. You know when the players come out in the tunnel before a match? And they're both in the tunnel. One of the leaders, the leader of Arsenal, decides to have a few words against the Manchester United players. The captain hadn't yet come out. When the captain of that team came out, when Roy Keane, when he came out to the front, he looked at the captain of the other team. He said, look, if you ever talk to any of my players again, look what's going to happen to you. Do your talking on the pitch. And in many places in the UK, they were talking about the whole idea of leadership skills just because of these two sportsmen. Highlighting that in every area of our life, wherever you turn, you will see people discussing the concept of leadership. That's why someone like Mahatma Gandhi rocked the world world because of his simplicity in his leadership. Sometimes leaders can have an overpowerful, overbearing attitude with their people. Sometimes leaders in our own community, you feel scared to go and say salam to them. You start shivering when you speak to them. Whereas in reality, a person should go to the leaders of the community. He should feel relaxed with the leaders of the community. There shouldn't be an overbearing idea. Ali ibn Abi Talib used to say to Malik al-Ashtar, make sure there isn't a hijab between you and the people. What he meant is, don't seclude yourself from the people. Let the people meet you. Let the people listen to you. Let the people sit with you. This is what a true leader is. And that's why Mahatma Gandhi's name is discussed and analyzed in virtually every syllabus at every school in the world today. Virtually every syllabus in history discusses Indian independence in the earliest 20th century and discusses Mahatma Gandhi's marches, Mahatma Gandhi's fasts. And we look to see, where did Gandhi get his inspiration? He says, when I took 72 with me on my Salt March, I took 72 because Hussein ibn Ali took 72 with him. Imagine that, a person who many people are studying in the West, they do not know his role model was Hussein ibn Ali. 72 I took with me because Hussein's 72 have remained eternal. And therefore I wanted to make sure that my 72 were eternal. And that's why when we look at Rasulullah, for example, as a leader, you find with Rasulullah one great aspect, that with all the warriors he had in